Hello, today we're building a witch's apothecary where we'll be brewing a very interesting concoction. I don't know what any of these ingredients do, which feels like how curses usually start, so let's get right into it. I'm starting off with a round base that I cut out from a thick artboard. And with that, I'm going to lay down some clay, cut rock shapes, which I will then beat the life out of it using a ball of foil. This will give it a nice texture. None of this needs to be perfect because they are rocks after all. I don't like the way these two rocks are touching each other, so I'm going to slice a bit off here because we're going to fill in these empty spaces soon. Now that those little tweaks are done, we're going to beat them once again into perfection. And look, we have rocks. Beautiful. I'll be using some mortar mix that I found in a craft shop a while back, and we're going to use this to fill in the gaps. This needs to be mixed with water. Ooh, it looks like I added too much water, so I'm going to go ahead and add a bit more mortar mix because we want a slightly thicker texture. And with a damp paper towel, I'm wiping off the excess. Alright, so I've used a pasta machine to roll out some Sculpey clay, and I'm laying it down on a thick cardstock that's already been measured and cut to use as one of the walls. The walls will also be rock formation, so I'll just be using the same techniques as the floor. Look at that nice texture. Alright, and with a pointy tool, I'm just going to start sculpting in some of the rock formations. Moving on to our shelf. Here you'll see a very rough sketch of how I want the top trim of the shelf to look like. I'll cut this out and use it as a template and trace the design onto a piece of wood, which will then be cut again and placed as the trim. You'll see it in a bit. I have the back of the shelf and side pieces cut out, which I will be gluing together using a wood glue. Specifically, I use a wood glue called LePage, and it has a 10-minute drying time and gets tacky fairly quickly. Here I'm adding the shelves, which are a pain in the ass, and you really do need to measure these things out, or else you're gonna be crying later. I've also gone ahead and made the bottom shelf, which will have a fully functioning drawer, and I'm painting the inside before gluing the pieces together to make life a little easier later on. Now it's time to sand. Don't forget to sand your pieces. It makes a huge difference in the end result. Normally you want to start with a rougher sandpaper. Here I'm using 220 grit. So the lower the grit number, the rougher the sandpaper is, and the higher the grit, the more fine the sandpaper is. So you want to start with a low number and work your way up to a finer paper to really smooth things out. Now, I don't want this to look like modern furniture, so I'm really going to spend some time adding details to the trim. Normally I would use a wood stain, but with this it really doesn't matter. We're going to be roughing it up so much and dry brushing with different shades of brown. Plus, I had already made the decision to use scraps of wood from a different project so that they don't go to waste, and they already had paint on them, so wood stain wouldn't work. Also, these sheets of basswood are very expensive, and we don't waste materials around here. It's time to weather this baby and add years on its life. Coming in with some more sandpaper and paying close attention to corners that get extra scuffed through everyday life, it helps to look at photos of old furniture to see where the scuffs normally sit. I have a couple old school drawer handles here, and using a hand drill, I'll drill a hole for them to sit in nice and snug with an added bit of glue. Just making sure the drawer is still open seamlessly, and it looks like we're good to go. Now that our cabinet is all distressed and weathered, we're moving on to the little bits and bobs that'll fill up each shelf. With some off-white polymer clay, I'm rolling out some candles. Once you have all your candles at the desired length, we're going to pop them in the oven at 275 degrees for around 12 minutes. Now that the candles have cooled off, I'll be drilling a hole into each one so that I could add the wicks. And for the wick, I am using a thin wire. Now you can do this before baking the candles, which would probably be easier, but I find that they'll lose the perfect candle shape when you do that, so that's why I prefer to just drill the holes in afterwards. Now with some liquid clay, I'll be painting on the illusion of melted wax for each candle. I love this look. It's simple, yet so effective. And because I'm a sucker for having everything handmade, I'll also be rolling out potion bottles out of clay. They are an absolute pain, but worth it. Listen, I'm not entirely sure how to explain what I'm doing here, but I'm just gonna keep working this tip and trying my best to get the shape of a bottle. Keep smoothing it out, it'll eventually get there. We're getting close. We're almost there, and I have about 17 more of these to make. Now that I have all the bottles sculpted, I used some coffee stained paper and a ton of patience. I've written out all the labels and even rolled out some corks for each one, using a toothbrush to give the cork some of its natural texture. I'll also be adding books and scrolls to the piece, so using my coffee stained paper once again, I'll be burning the edges and simultaneously trying not to start a fire, and this gives it such an old look that I absolutely love. Alright, now we have all our little bits ready for display, but there's still a couple more things to do before we place all the puzzle pieces together, and we're going to start with a cauldron. I'm using hot glue to add in some of these mini silver beads, which will then be topped off with a mixture of glossy Mod Podge and dish soap. I really wanted a realistic bubbling cauldron look, so I scoured the internet looking for tips and tricks, and I found one. So shout out to the Miniature Addiction Club here on YouTube. I'll link her video in the description below so you can see exactly how to achieve this look. I could not make this piece without having a witch's broom, so I sculpted one with polymer clay, and then I'll be using this long synthetic grass and gluing it all around the base. I had a thought that I wanted the cauldron to sit on top of something, and with the limited space I have within my glass cloche, I decided I'd make a stool using just a sheet of wood and some toothpicks. Now it's time for the most fun, which is securing each piece down with some super glue. This is when things really start to come to life. Everything before this just feels like my brain is going to explode. There's so many things I need to make, and I feel like I've spent so many hours on it and I'm getting nowhere. Meanwhile, we've already made 90% of the things. Now we're just putting all the little puzzle pieces together. And it starts to come together pretty quickly, and it's exciting to see. Now that the shelf is glued onto one of the walls, I'm going to start adding in some foliage, some vines, some dried herbs, whatever it may be. Again, I don't have a lot of space to work with, but I also don't want this wall to be plain, so I decided I'm going to hang up some dried herbs, and I think that'll be cute, and it fits perfectly because this is a little corner for potions. I'll be using these itty bitty nails to hang up the herbs, so I'm gonna tie the herbs with thread and then hang them on these nails, and oh my goodness, that's so cute. Alright, so I took the herbs down for a minute because I did forget to add in some variation of color on the walls. So I am using my favorite method, which is dry brushing, and also using chalk pastel to give it some more depth and color and shadows and things like that. We have finally reached the stage where I can officially glue this down, and some hot glue will do just the trick. I drilled a hole into both the bottom of the cauldron and the stool, then added a wire so the cauldron isn't just glued down, it'll be extra secure. And with that, we're done. Let's roll out some close-ups. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, I would really appreciate you hitting that like button so that I can continue making these videos for you and at a much quicker pace. We're not going to talk about when my last video upload was. Okay. And leave a comment. Let me know which is your favorite witch movie. Mine would have to be Hocus Pocus. All right, I'll see you next time.